Bardo, False Chronicle of a Handful of Truths. Perhaps the most awaited film in 2022 that polarized my thoughts if it's a film that is worth the wait. On one hand, it is a cinematic experience that is worth seeing on theaters, if only Netflix hasn't bought the rights. But on the other hand, it went the road of being too personal that the maestro himself became indulged with his own world where only he could understand. Critics, audience, and the embargo so far have the same consensus as I am. But don't mind them, don't mind me. I'm only here to tell you what I thought about the film, and is it worth it for you to check it out? Just listen out, and I will let you decide. This is a cinema lens. Yeah, so this is actually the second time I've watched Bardo when it got released on Netflix. So I'm really blessed, to get the opportunity to watch the film in the big screen because this is a film that should be experienced on the cinema. It shouldn't be watched on your TV screen or laptop screen on Netflix. But nevertheless, the reason why I need to watch the film second time in a small screen because I don't know. I really have a mixed feeling about this film. Like I want to like it or hate it. Like it's just hard for me to decide. But more on that later. So I think it's better for me first to read what Bardo means actually. So in Tibetan Buddhism, it is defined as a stage of existence between death and rebirth, varying in length according to a person's conduct in life and manner of or age at death. No, death. No, yeah, death. Yeah, I got that actually from the Oxford language in internet. I never really know the definition myself before I watched the film, but from what I just read to you, perhaps you could guess that it will be a surrealist film that depicts a lot of out of place events. It's not really actually surprising for an Inarritu film. Like he already did this in Birdman before. Anyway, it is a film about an acclaimed journalist turned documentary filmmaker as he goes into this weird, trippy, introspective journey of his whole life. And how trippy this film is, from the beginning, you already being shown a reference to Fellini's 8.5, where if you remember the man floating above the sky, yeah, it's that similar. It's how trippy the film is. And then suddenly, you just cut to an operation room where a mother delivers a baby. And once she successfully delivered a baby, the baby said that he didn't want to live in this world. And so the doctor just put the baby back, like, what the fuck, I really wanted to laugh so hard on that scene, like, just so fucking disgusting and absurd. How absurd that scene is, like, the theater just went, whoa, what the hell is this movie about, but from the other side, like, you soon realize, like, how personal this film is to Inarritu. Because, you can definitely see that this film is about him, a Mexican filmmaker, deciding to pursue career in the US and live in his home country, getting big awards, and now suddenly he has an identity crisis of where he actually belongs. And the conflict is not all about his career, but just like life where everything is like connected. Like on the outside where he can't control others' action, like, there's a scene where Amazon tried to buy the state of Mexico. And then there's also the negative perception of Mexican immigrants, just like what we saw right now in the US right now. And also the historical madness of how indigenous Mexicans are being slaughtered by the colonizers. And it all then goes back to him on what the hell has Silverio, the main character that represents Inarritu, has been doing in his life. But all this time, I'll be just explain to you guys. In reality, like, this is not a film that should be seen in Netflix. It's cinematography, the soundscape design, like the Zen atmosphere, like it's a thing that should be experienced in theater, where everything just dark and you're just having a relationship with the screen himself, and the sound is more immersive than what you can imagine than you see on the small screen of your laptop. This is actually a film that should be seen in theater. It just has, it shouldn't be on Netflix. It shouldn't be on Netflix, Like how Inarritu direct the camera work alongside Darius Konji, like is brilliantly engaging. Like take a shot from where Silverio reconciled with his This Is That, where honestly, like it could be any other boring scene where nothing happened, but with the work of visual effects as well as so surreal, yet emotional resounding here. Like the direction, the cinematography, and like the visual effect team really did great to achieve this. And when it transitions to another scene, oh my god, you should watch it yourself. If you watch Birdman, you know what I'm talking about. And that transition is so well done. And I'm so glad, that I'll be able to watch this on Beef before it was released onto Netflix. Like, I'm truly speechless of the visuals. Darius Konji got nominated for the cinematography, by the way, and he should, he should. And I've been just praising this film for the time, but why people has been shaming this film, why people has been like giving a negative perception to this film. Like, I personally do agree that this is not the best Inarritu work. Like, despite the ambition, I think this is the most ambitious film that he has ever made. But for myself at least, I feel like this is a film that slowly lost into self-indulgence as the film progresses. I'm not complaining about how he crafted the story into a semi-autobiography of him. Like, in fact, I thought it was great. Every filmmaker shall make a story personal into him, and I could identify it as a personal. That Inarritu perhaps should be called to master the basic of filmmaking. Because I recognize his intention. This is a personal film for him. But rather like he just went too far, to put it simply, like lost in his own thought, adding too much seasoning to the food. Yeah, instead of making the taste more complex, it just fall into blandness. Yeah, actually the title do state everything though. Bardo, a meditative film it should be. He himself even has stated about how there's just no absolute truth in this film, just a journey between reality and imagination, only carrying the subjective truth of emotion. But aside from several scenes, I just never really found myself to be indulged into that emotion. Yeah, instead of being carried out into the film, I just sometimes back for this meditation to end. If you really think that it's just me, well, yeah, I'm sorry, it's no. So when I found the scene to be interesting, I tried to look at what besides me thinking from their face at the cinema when in the Busan International Film Festival. And the person sitting beside me, she just slept comfortably in her chair. I was like, whoa. And also, like, there's another funny story where a guy in front of me just playing on his phone, like, in a film festival where, people are more sensitive than they should be. Like, they all mostly appreciate what's happening on the screen. But, there's like a guy in front of me just playing his fucking phone. That's very unbelievable. I almost tried to laugh, at point. But you get what I'm trying to say here. Like, I don't really think that the audience was too happy with the film. But even if I did not enjoy it, and maybe the others also do not, you have to give an appreciation to the filmmaking and what Inarritu is trying to say. And I have to admit that this is a film that left an unexplainable impression even long after the credit rolls. For me. Yeah, I remember after watching Bardo, I got like 4 until 5 hours waiting for the next film in the festival. And for the half available time, I just researching on how Konji actually shot the film. Yeah, the visual is very that good that even I wanted to research how he shot that. But what's more fascinating for me, like, is perhaps the meditation comes after the film ends. I do think a lot about what being an artist means. Like, this is a film that really gives a very much message about that, and also how it linked to the capitalist system on how art produce money and fame and awards. And it is even worse for a filmmaker to be unpatriotic about their own country. If a filmmaker that lost their own identity, go work into the other industry on the other side of the country or the other side of the continent, in one of the biggest film industries in the world, in Hollywood. This personal question like struck with me a lot as an aspiring filmmaker who doesn't come out from LA. And it resonates to me even with the accomplishment Inarritu has achieved. Like, I share like some commonality with Inarritu, perhaps because I am a foreigner, just like Inarritu is to Hollywood. Yeah, I share like there's an emotion that struck with me. I understand what Inarritu feels. And when I thought about it more, I think it's better to analyze and understand the film by imagining if looking from Inarritu eye himself. the director I himself. Because this is a sort of semi-biography of him, like compiled through dream and an unrealistic environment, which a film could also be, and life itself, metaphorically, where we don't need to understand everything, and I'm so glad that Inarritu took this uncommon approach, which definitely would upset mainstream moviegoer, where they need to understand like 95% of the film. But the ambiguity actually what makes the film work for me, where it reminds us about living in this indefinite world as we just trying to seek more truth and truth and truth and truth and truth. But yeah, sadly, like this film like couldn't offer us any truth, and that's the point. Like, I'm sorry if you're looking at this film and you're trying to find something meaningful, like you want to have everything explained to you. Like, nah, I'm sorry, it's not a film that for you. Like, it asks us to reflect, take a moment at what makes life livable, and a meditation of relationship that we do not need to understand everything, but to feel that moment. Yeah, but unfortunately, like, it doesn't reach that Zen level. But nice try for this though. There's some moment, obviously, but yeah, it doesn't really reach that potential for me. And yeah, that's my take. Masterpiece or self-indulgence. Like, I can't really answer that because I'm still meditating for this film. But one thing I could say that this is a film of experience that still leave me thinking until this day. But what about you guys? What do you think of Bardo? Is it another Inarritu's great piece of artwork, or you felt that people should just skip this over? Let me know in the comments. And for you guys who haven't watched it, it's now playing on Netflix. Like, try to give it a chance if you do feel it deserve a chance. Anyway, it is available on your small screen right now, so do watch it. I'll see you guys in the next podcast. Subscribe to Cinema to follow my journey. Share it to your friends and family who share the same passion of cinema. And that's it. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.